So this is a 3D Studio Max interface that you'll see when you boot it up. It essentially consists of the viewports, the command panel, the graphite toolbar, and the menu bar. For this video, we're going to focus on the command panel. The command panel has been utilized since the beginning of 3D Studio Max. It houses the majority of the tools that you'll need to produce your projects. In here you will find 6 panels, each with its own subset of tools. The first one we're going to look at is the Create panel. The Create panel has a bunch of sub-tabs such as geometry, splines, shapes, lights, and these allow you to create essentially all the objects in 3D Studio Max. So let's look under the Geometry tab first. And the Geometry tab has a drop-down that allows you to select different types of objects, such as standard primitives. Now the standard primitives houses very simple objects, such as boxes, cones, spheres, cylinders, really basic objects that you can use to create a lot of your models. There is the extended primitives drop-down, which houses some more complex models, such as the torus, the oil tank, prisms, stuff that you're not going to use quite as much, but when you utilize them can be a real time saver. It also offers some other fairly complex objects such as doors that are 3D Max native and built within 3D Studio Max. You can create windows from scratch. It has a built-in window creator, and stairs. That's kind of the extent of the Geometries tab. Then there's also the Splines tab here, the Shapes tab, that allows you to create splines. If you go under the Splines drop-down menu, it'll allow you to create a spline from scratch, either from a line or from some pre-existing objects, such as circles, donuts, stars, stuff like that. There's some more extended splines. I don't use these very often, but they're good for creating channels, beams, and stuff like that. It has angles, and these all have preset parameters that we'll look at a little bit later. The Lighting tab allows you to put lighting inside a scene. Cameras, once again, allows you to place cameras in the scene. The helpers offer some tools that I don't think we're going to utilize them in these videos, but you should know that they're here just to help you be a little bit more accurate with 3D Studio Max. Some measurement stuff, there's a light meter, grids, dummies that you can point cameras at in the future. Forces, once again, we're not going to use the Forces tab, but it's good that you know it's here. It allows you to put forces that 3D Studio Max has inherently in the program. You can add weight to stuff, gravity, you can push stuff. It has a physics engine built in. And then there's the Systems. The Systems tab we're going to use a little bit. This allows you to put in daylighting systems and bone systems for rigging characters. We're going to use it to actually add a daylight system that will allow us to dictate where our model is located in the world and the orientation and the time. It'll accurately display the shadows and lighting, to make it like real world. Then there's a Modify panel. And a Modify panel is what we're going to use to edit essentially everything that we place in 3D Studio Max. You're going to get very familiar with this panel. The Modify panel has preset, when you're using a primitive, it has preset parameters you can adjust, and it has this rollout here where you can add modifiers that modify your geometries, such as you can make an editable poly, and then there's a lattice modifier that will allow you to add lattice work. There's a whole bunch of modifiers. We're not going to go through all of them today. We couldn't possibly. But play around in there. There's a lot of really cool stuff that can save you a lot of time. And then there's a hierarchy, the hierarchy panel. We're not going to get into this too much today. We will use it quite a bit, though, to center our pivot and move our pivot about an object. That's very important. We're not going to use motion at all today, but just so you know, it's here. The display panel we'll use a little bit. It's good for setting up your scene, turning on and off certain types of geometries, lights, shapes, stuff like that. So if your scene becomes too big, you can come here and turn certain properties off to help your computer run it. And then there's the Utilities panel, and this just has miscellaneous utilities that we'll utilize every now and then in 3D Studio Max.